Hello and welcome to another video. So today we're going to be taking a look at a Vengeance Blood tempo-y orientated deck. So it's pretty much your standard Vengeance Blood with a couple of new things, I guess. So we've got the Big Knuckle Scarlets and Discreble Demons, which give you a little bit of nice tempo, especially those Big Knuckles and Discreble Demons, just because they have a nice stat line and can easily kill things. Obviously the Scarlets are a great way to boost your health back up and deal a couple of damage, and everything else is your standard Vengeance play, so your Amblings, your Blood Wolves, your Belfs, all that sort of stuff. You're mainly looking in your mulligans for your turn 1, turn 2 plays, and maybe even a turn 3 with Vengeance or Disagreeable. Otherwise, Belf is okay if you've already got the Vengeance and a 2-drop. Dark Airjammer being a big card as soon as Belf is dropped to proc out either Urias's, Blood Wolf's, Spiderwebs, sometimes Ambling, but you really hope for the other 3 over the Ambling Wraith. And of course the Dark Generals, just a couple of those because they're great 4-storm damages and have a really good way to go for lethal most of the time. The Diabolic Drains being a heal and clear, so you get rid of wards, and that's pretty much the rest of the deck. There isn't much in there that really needs explaining, so we'll get right into a couple of games. Our first matchup is against Shadow. This deck is okay against Shadow. I haven't had too much trouble. This deck isn't perfect. I would much rather play probably Agrobats, but it's definitely, you know, it's something that you can play if you're not willing to play Agrobats at the moment and you still want to play a blood class, whether that's for your daily missions or anything else. So we start with a pretty optimized hand, 1, 2 and 4, with the Razorry, which can easily be played on 3 or 2 depending on how you do want to use it. It is good for the face damage, but if you have to use it for clear, then that's what you have to do to keep the tempo on board. This is a reasonably quick deck. I mean, most of the time you can tell if you're going to win or not within the first, say, 4 moves. Sometimes you do get dragged out a little bit and get lucky you can win. That's why you never concede early unless you have absolutely no play and you've already lost. So Soul Hunt kills off our Urias, which is unfortunate, but they haven't really played anything, so this Belf can be played without too much concern. Unfortunately, the draw of the double Disagreeables isn't that nice. I would have much preferred to have had something else. Anything nearly would have been good. They could go with this Belf. Fortunately, I don't have the nice pretty Belfs, but one day maybe. We do draw Airjammer though, which is pretty much perfect as a Belf follow-up, especially since we've already played 1 Ambling, so our odds of pulling anything good are a little bit higher. So we do get to the Wolf, which is a little bit more damage. We have a pretty good board going into turn 5, and Shadow has nothing. Basically what you want when you're playing against Shadow. This next match is another reasonably quick one. I mean, most of the decks I've been covering lately have been reasonably fast. We may start looking at some more control-y and more late game card decks, but I'm just not sure what would work at the moment. I'm looking into Rune, but I'm not sure what kind of Rune I want to play to do a decent content for you guys. So we've got Spiderweb Imp, Urias, and Airjammer. Obviously the Urias and Spiderweb are quite good. The Airjammer is a little lackluster without any kind of decent proc. But Big Knuckle and Devil of Vengeance round out this hand quite nicely. Unfortunately, Sword gets off to an amazing start. They're definitely a more aggro-orientated Sword deck when they're playing cards like that. But the Spiderweb Imp is pretty much an instant shutdown to most aggro decks. Unfortunately though, our health total does dwindle a little bit, so we've just got to hope that we can get our tempo back and control this board well. Which with these trades isn't so bad. So we can go Urias into Ambling. Hopefully we can draw some damage. That's the main idea of this play. If we can get the 2-drop and the 1-2 to ram into Urias, then we've got the Ambling that can easily start sweeping up excess cards that are on board. Unfortunately, Princess Vanguard, giving them a pretty decent play. Unfortunately, they couldn't, I don't believe they could use it on this, or they just chose, no they couldn't, because it has to be an officer. So we actually set up pretty nicely because they weren't able to use that on the Urias. The damage we're taking though is crazy, but the Big Knuckle not proccing the 2 damage on us is quite good, so why not use it? Get rid of the 2 drops and start to clear out the 1 drops. while getting just that a little bit of damage to face. And they have one card in hand. Palace Fencer, nothing too solid. And Kunoichi Trainee, so now they're risking top decking while we have an optimal hand. So they concede, realizing they have no way to completely rush us down here. And this match is another Shadow deck. Golden Bat, eh? Well, he's definitely not playing bats when he's running Shadow. This game is one of the a little longer matchups, even though we start out with a pretty alright hand. I mean, 1, 2, 4 isn't bad at all. Especially when it's Big Knuckle. And we're going first, which isn't as good for Big Knuckle, but it's still not bad either. So, turn 1 ambling, always an optimal turn 1 play when you're playing blood decks like this. And our opponent plays nothing, giving us the advantage to play out the wolf, so we can proc at least 1 damage ahead of them. Double Big Knuckle's a little difficult. I mean, we don't have a turn 3 yet, and using these isn't going to be easy. We do have to kill this Unica, which is disappointing. I would have liked to have got more damage to their face, but sometimes sacrifices must be made for the greater good. Attendant of the Night, very sticky card, makes things a little more difficult for me. I decided not to play anything here just because I don't want to proc the Attendant myself. I'd much rather have them proc it, which they do with that Necro Assassin. But this way, the Big Knuckle now gets full value, killing off the 3-3 and getting rid of that 4-4 once evolved. And we have some options for both healing and damage. So we are playing a little bit of a longer game here, trying to keep our tempo solid, making sure we're always ahead on the board, and making sure our opponent's value doesn't go up. Usher being dropped before 6, not gaining any kind of enhance, but used as a trade. Definitely probably one of the weaker plays they probably could have made. So, Big Knuckle again. Why? Because this 1-1 can then be dealt with, and the 4-4 can be dealt with, making sure they can't easily kill me with anything substantial in the following turn. And again, we get to keep the tempo on board, while setting ourselves 2 Vengeance, allowing for a Dark Airjammer or a Scarlet Diablo, depending on where we want to go. Gal Tempest, though, clears us out, and sets up for another Attendant. So I was going to go with the Scarlet. I do decide against it, playing out basically everything else in my hand instead, mainly because the Scarlet Saber and the Diabolic Drain are huge threats to the opponent. I didn't want to have to use them too early. So this is weird, okay, they go for this, they play that, of course they take 3 damage, they then proc that, means them take 4 total in their own turn, while dealing 2 to me, putting us in a reasonably same spot when it comes to damage. They then go for the Immortal Thane, obviously, you know, try and trade it, making sure they can deal with this. I don't believe I had lethal here. I looked for like a good little bit trying to work out how I could go for lethal, but I couldn't find anything, so I decided to go with the Scarlet Saber on board, healing 2, taking 1, and then using the trade in the Diabolic to actually put me at an advantage, so I can hit face for 4 and leave them at 4. Hoping that, you know, something like Hector isn't going to completely dominate my board. And this is where things get interesting. This Shadow player makes a huge mistake. They Death's Breath, meaning they take a heap of damage, leaving them on 1, and then play Unica. They could have went for the Evolve on the Zombie. I'm assuming it was a misplay, but it was honestly crazy. I was like, wow, of all things they could do to kill themselves. So that wraps up the Vengeance Tempo Blood deck. I'm not sure what I'd probably change in this. I did change a couple things from a list that I did find somewhere, and I found this to be okay. It's, like I said, not the best Blood version, but if you are looking for something different, it's an option. So if you guys want to play this deck, the deck list will be in the description below. You can hit that like button and subscribe for more content, and I will catch you guys next time. See ya!